culture is a lot more than a ping pong table or, free beer. And I think the way we've built this kind of culture as well as core values is really organically. And we had three core values that we talked about in the beginning a little bit. No one in the company could even repeat them or really know what they were. And it was one of those reflective moments where you look in the mirror, you're like, if everyone's having a hard time even saying these, are we even really living them? And how are we expecting everyone else to? And that's when we took a few days just to step back and really evaluate the business. And I think that's been a pretty key turning point when we got real with ourselves and didn't just try to force this.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Growing your company. What does it take? Well, you probably think about the product. You probably think about the timing. You probably think about your special process to make value in the marketplace. Well, there's one thing that a lot of people don't think about, and it's really the most important thing, and it's the people. When I talk to fast growth companies, I am overjoyed by every time I hear when they talk about their fast growth, they're not as impressed with their revenue numbers or even their profit numbers and all the metrics of the business. They're impressed with the people that are on their journey with them. They are impressed with the people that are taking a feeling of ownership in everything that they do, and that drives the business forward. Now, what I'm talking about is companies that are really growing fast really do have a core value around ownership, people that feel that sense of ownership. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this before, whether it be in my articles on Inc. magazine or whether it be on the stages that I go to different conferences and talk about culture being a competitive advantage. But I also talk about the importance of having an ownership culture. Well, the number one company on the Inc. 2019 list, the fastest growing company is Freestar. So today we're going to talk with David Freedman. David is a co-founder there. They grew at 36,680%. They did almost 37 million, and they only had just over 20 employees. So think about that for a second. Their level of growth in 3 years was almost 37,000%. I uncovered exactly what it is. In short, it's about their focus to the core values and how they really live by them and the details behind that. David shared with me some of the details that I'm going to share with you through the interview, but I bring you this, that it all comes back to this sense of ownership. So now tune in to David Freedman, co-founder of Freestar, the number one Inc. company for 2019. Thanks for tuning in here to Grow Think Tank. Really excited about sharing this with you. And before you run, I have done so many interviews over the last few weeks. I have such an exciting time to share with you that those interviews have been organized into the 12 core principles of fast growth companies. So all you have to do to get that is go to genehammett.com/worksheet. So you can get the 12 principles, and I've been able to go in there and find which episodes will align to each individual episode. When you subscribe to Grow Think Tank, you will find exactly what you need so that you can move forward. And many of them haven't been published yet, depending on when you're hearing this, but you can tune in to the date that means the most to you. David, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much. How about yourself?
I'm doing fine. We're recording this a couple of days after you were just honored to be the fastest growing company for 2019 of all privately held companies in the United States. How does that feel?
I'm still riding that high. It was truly an honor is the right word. I mean, it was a humbling experience being surrounded by so many incredibly talented entrepreneurs that have all created, something out of nothing. And it could not have been a better weekend.
Well, to put this in context for everybody listening in, I was looking at some of the numbers, little over 36 million, almost 37 million in revenue in a very short period of time, over a 3-year growth rate that was 36,680%. Most people believe that's not even possible. How would you say that is possible? Like, because you were so little in the beginning and then now you're a huge company?
Sure. I think it's really a matter of kind of a combination of staying true to your values and what you're trying to accomplish, but also not being afraid to pivot and understand that not every decision you're going to set out making that you think is right is always going to be that right decision. So move quickly and just continue on the path. It sounds like it's this, while it's great growth, it really is just ups and downs, and every entrepreneur is going to tell you the same story. There's never this just straight line to success.
Well, we jumped into the numbers, so let's go back and look at Freestar. What is the industry, and what is it you guys do, so the audience can kind of get a feel for it?
Well, this is my time to also let my mother know, I think, because she's still a little confused. But ultimately, we really simplify the monetization for publishers. Programmatic advertising, in its kind of, I think, most basic form. Every time you see an ad appear on the internet, an auction is happening in milliseconds, and there's a lot of decisions being made. And ultimately, we're coming in and really managing that entire auction process, putting pressure on it and driving up the price so publishers can make as much money as possible and really with as little headache as possible.
Well, I love the model because, I see so much growth. I think we still have room for growth for all of the internet. We're creating content and everyone's spending hours and hours and hours online. So you've got to like the way things are trending for your business.
Oh, it's only getting stronger each day. And I think, where we come in, our motto is publisher first, but the entire industry is really driven to support the advertiser and bend over kind of backwards for the advertiser. And that ultimately is hurting the publisher and the people that are actually providing this great content like yourself. And it's become more and more complex and more difficult to really, as an individual publisher, compete with the, Facebook and Googles of the world. So it's not just that we're providing this world-class tech, but we're also attacking the whole industry with the amount of size and good quality sites. So there's a lot of value for the advertisers as well.
Now, what's really impressive, if you have this huge growth, but you have just 45 or so employees as of last year?
Correct. As of this year, as of last year, we were about high 20s.
Wow, that's even more impressive because you did within 20 employees, you had almost 37 million in revenue. A lot of people think that that's not even possible.
Sure. I think there's a combination there. Our business scales very nicely, but also it's not a quantity game. It's a quality game, and especially in our business. And we've gone out from day one and really have only hired the best of the best in the industry. So we don't need 6 people when one person has that knowledge and experience and work ethic and will to kind of help drive this company forward.
I hear that a lot with fast growth companies. And I think with this labor shortage, a lot of leaders go, well, I just need to find someone that can kind of do the work. But you say you hire the best of the best. I would imagine you're also really looking for a good culture fit. Would you agree it's both of those?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you could be the most talented person in the world, but also the most cocky and just someone no one even wants to work with. And finding that perfect mix is really difficult. And, our interview process here is pretty strenuous. And, we really try to dig in. Multiple people within the company also are interviewing and giving that feedback to make sure that, brains is one thing, but that fit is equally as important as well.
We had talked a few days ago about the really importance of the core values that drive the company. And I talked to a lot of companies that have grown fast and they have this real attention to core values. Not necessarily name the core values, but in a definition sense, what are the core values and why are they so important for the growth of your company?
Well, I think the reason they're so important is just we want to also, within hiring these brilliant people, allow them to essentially be their own entrepreneur, make their own right decision. This is not a big corporate company where you need to get approvals. And I think that as long as you're looking towards the core principles and kind of driving and guiding your decisions around those, you're going to make those right decisions. And when you do make a mistake, did you really go about it in the right way? And if the answer was yes, great. Then what do we learn from that mistake and how do we continue to just improve on a daily basis?
I don't know if you know much about my speaking, but I speak around the country probably 10, 12 times a year. The core of my speech is about cultures where they have a sense or a feeling of ownership. And it really is about that entrepreneur spirit. did you borrow that from somewhere else, or is it just what you believe is the way companies should be, aligning around their employees and growing fast?
I'm sure I've learned it along the way, but I think it's really also, I mean, both of my parents are entrepreneurs, small clothing stores. And the one thing I would always remember them saying to us, there's a big difference between employers and employees. And I think the way you care about a business, the way you put that effort in and day out is definitely different if you're an owner versus just clocking in and clocking out. So it was probably just inherently earned throughout that process of wanting our employees to really have that ownership, so they are treating it as their own. We also give, or not give, but equity is distributed to our employees. It's obviously earned. And that's the other key of this is we're not just telling you to think like an owner. You are an owner. We want you to share in the success of the business. And as we do well, you do well. And it's truly a team effort.
Well, I know it's easy to be able to put those things in. It feels like the right thing to do if you have a company that's going to grow fast is to actually give a slice out for others. But you actually probably have a sense of ownership even beyond that, like the mission of the company, the way people are treated, they're valued. Tell us a little bit about like the things outside of that slice of the pie that you've given everyone.
I think it really comes to teamwork in a lot of ways. I mean, one of our core values is we, not me. And that was a really easy, natural core value in the beginning days because Jeff, our VP of Publisher Operations, that was always his go-to line. And it can mean, I think you can interpret that in a lot of different ways, but ultimately there's no problem that's someone else's problem here. There's also, when you need a hand, don't be shy to ask for help. And I think too many times people just try to only stay in their own lane. And there's a fine balance there where you don't want everyone trying to do everything, but you also, a lot of the best ideas are going to come when people in cross-departmental are sharing frustrations or successes so we can learn and build upon that.
I love that. And since you mentioned this, maybe we should just spend a little bit of time in looking at the values that you guys have attached to. And I want to make sure that every company knows, don't just, borrow David's values because you feel like they're good, because they're all are good. But you really should come up with your own. That's fair to say, right, David?
Absolutely. And I'll be honest, I think we probably fell into that tip of that mistake in the beginning where, I think in the early days when you're starting up, you just need to have these values and you're trying to like figure out that culture you want. And culture is a lot more than a ping pong table or, free beer. And I think the way we've built this kind of culture as well as core values is really organically. And we had three core values that we talked about in the beginning a little bit. No one in the company could even repeat them or really know what they were. And it was one of those reflective moments where you look in the mirror and you're like, if everyone's having a hard time even saying these, are we even really living them? And how are we expecting everyone else to? And that's when we took a few days just to step back and really evaluate the business. And I think that's been a pretty key turning point when we got real with ourselves and didn't just try to force this.
So we, not me is a big one. And you talked about what that means. And I think, to me, it really is something that could be powerful as you value collaboration across different expertise and different technical skills and marketing skills. Is that about the way it works?
I'm sorry, is what the way it works? So
the we versus me, we, not me. It's about collaboration and, everybody participating together.
Absolutely. And also not being shy to ask for help, right? This isn't an individual sport. It's truly a team sport. And, we're all in this together. And I think sometimes people feel like they might have the burden where they need to have every answer or they need to, pretend that they're shining brighter than everyone else. But everything in the company at the end of the day is really connected. And, our sales team can be world-class, but if we don't have the engineering and the publisher operations team behind them to deliver on that promise, then your sales are essentially irrelevant as well. So I think understanding that the we, not me isn't just in kind of one sense or the other, but to truly be a successful company, everybody's got to be rowing in that same direction.
All right, give us another value that you could talk about for a few minutes.
Well, publisher first, which is a core value. tagline, it's really kind of the North Star that the entire company rallies around. And that's, as I said before, a lot of people really base their businesses on advertising to take advantage of publishers. And that's kind of, to me, one of the meanings. The other meaning too is, well, let's always do what is truly in the publisher's best interest. And that doesn't always mean it's going to directly benefit us financially, but in the long run it will, because they know that we're building that trust and they know they have a true partner at the end of the day. The other core value, and we have three, would be above and beyond. And that I think, to me, once again, can be interpreted in a lot of different ways, but that's not just clocking in and clocking out. That's thinking and acting like an owner. You're always going above. You want people to not just, make sure you close a deal, let's say, but are those people really happy? Are they going to be a promoter of your business? Are they going to think that you're the greatest thing ever? And it really isn't always that much more work. It's just doing the little things. And, we always talk about kind of that restaurant mentality. You could have a really bad experience at a restaurant. The food comes out burnt, but you could leave that restaurant thinking it's the greatest place in the ever, the way people reacted to it after. And I think as all entrepreneurs, we all know we're going to screw things up, and we're going to do that a lot. But are you doing what you should be doing when you really look in the mirror and truly going to the extent that you want someone to do for you when you're on the other side of those situations?
Now, you had also talked about failure, and failure is something that you guys embrace.
Absolutely.
Does that fit into one of these values more than the other?
I think that's a little bit of, I wouldn't say it's necessarily directly correlated, even it could be. And a little bit of the we not me is it's not you that failed, right? Because it's the entire team that has a part of that. And there's an entire team that can learn from that. A story I mentioned the other day was Andy, who was one of our first employees, took a massive pay cut and is just the heartbeat in a lot of ways of this company. And we wouldn't be where we are without him. Made a really bad mess up one day, and it cost us $250,000. And fast forward 2 years later, we celebrated that failure, as crazy as that might sound, at our company retreat on his 3-year anniversary. He's unfortunately a big Green Bay Packers fan, but besides that, he's a great guy. And we actually presented him with a Packers jersey with a nickname on the back that he's been coined of $250,000. And I think the company understanding that even a failure or a mistake at that level is going to be embraced as long as you were doing it with the right intentions, which he obviously was. And if you're going to cost a company $250,000 and then someone else makes kind of what you would think is a little mistake, don't be shy to raise your hand and say, hey, I messed up. What happened? What went wrong here? We don't need to dissect every ounce of it, but let's just never do it again.
Whoa, wait a minute. David just talked about celebrating failure. What do you think about that? Well, fast-growing companies that I've heard and talked to and I work with understand that failure is a part of the journey, and they have a different relationship. They're not avoiding taking risk. They really embrace those, and they have employees that are willing to take risk and learn from those failures, if you will. And David's story of sharing how an employee lost $250,000, $250,000, and how they actually gave him a jersey to celebrate that. I think you should be doing the same thing within your employees, the team structure, letting failure be okay. Now, I'm not saying we should all be taking wild risk, but I am saying that we should be okay with taking risks that are calculated, that will move the business forward. And if we do fail, that we actually learn from those things and actually use it to our advantage. Now, back to the interview with David.
I love this, and it really is one of the tenets of having an ownership culture. So whether you knew it or not, I mean, it really does say a lot about your company by embracing that and celebrating those kind of failures. When you think about reinforcing the failures, because 3 of them is not that much. I've seen companies that have, in my opinion, way too many of these values. No one knows what they are. No one can repeat them. But what do you do to reinforce it and make sure people stay aligned around the values day in and day out?
Well, I think it's now become kind of part of that culture. I think in the early days, it's when people come to you with a question, instead of giving them the answer, well, what is publisher first? And then, it seemed like pretty quickly, even though it might not have been that quick, you start hearing someone say something at a meeting or an idea and someone else going, well, is that publisher first? And I think as long as you're going back to those values and kind of, it's questioning and pointing them in the right direction where they can fail sometimes, and that failure is going to be okay. But is it guiding your decisions? Are you truly going home at the end of the day and saying, hey, I went above and beyond today. I didn't clock in and clock out, but I was really I stayed late, or I was helping people on other teams get a job done that I know they needed. They just looked down today. Everyone's going to have an off day, and I definitely have them. And it's great when you have a team truly with you that's going to pick you up, and you should be doing the same for everyone else in your company as well.
Do you recognize people in special ways for following the core values?
So for us, we do a monthly all hands. We're based here in Phoenix, Arizona, and have an office in New York and LA, but also other remote employees throughout the country. And I think part of this culture we've built is making sure that even though people might be remote, they don't feel remote. And at our monthly all hands, we're going through our core metrics, our numbers, and a lot of the things that make the business beat from a high level. But at the end, we're always celebrating what we call just people living our values and calling out, and each of the VPs are typically calling out the people on their team or people even on other teams that have helped them out and have really just lived the core value without them knowing. And then we follow that up with kind of honoring our employee of the month as well every month.
Is there an award for that?
There is. There's a trophy that's a nice little prideful thing to have on your desk. And then at the end of the year at our holiday party, we end up doing some pretty nice presents and raffles based upon everyone that has been named either an employee of the month and also in kind of living our values section.
Love that. And I'm sure everyone has fun with it as well.
Absolutely. And even with our employee of the month, we have a wall here in Phoenix, and the pictures maybe aren't very traditional. They're not your normal headshot. It's really, we're showcasing the people and who they really are and kind of their personalities, and whether that's, Brandon in kind of a half Saints and Spurs jersey, or, at the other end you have Carrie in kind of her playwright, and she's into the theater world, and maybe a Shakespeare hat on hers, and Brian, who's one of our really talented engineers, who's also a magician. So really funny, great photos, and everyone gets a kick out of it as well.
Now, I want to wrap this up with one big question here, and I don't want to lead you in any specific way, but I do recognize that one of your core values is publisher first as a company. But as a leader, David, if I asked you, if you grew fast, what's more important for you as the leader, your employees or your customers?
Without a doubt, it's the employees, because we have no customers without the employees and the staff. This would be a very scary place if I was all alone here, and those customers would be leaving very quickly. So making sure that you're building a culture where people are actually excited to come to work. And I'll leave you kind of with one of my favorite stories. And it was really a pretty amazing moment, but someone that I've tried to bring onto our team for 2.5 years and has continued to tell me no, finally broke and joined our team. And he sent an email to myself, Kurt, our president, and a couple of the other vice presidents, and said, hey, I think a lot of times people can kind of overlook what, the culture and really how amazing work is, because you're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. But what you guys have done is truly amazing. And he said, I realized this when I had lunch today with some former ex-coworkers. And the first question they asked me was, is the grass really greener? And he started to laugh, and he just said, absolutely. And he's like, the more I sat through that lunch and hearing them complain about just a lot of the politics within their company versus me truly coming in, being excited to come to work every day, he's like, I just wanted to let you guys know. And that was, to me, a super proud moment. And I think, the business side of it is kind of the scorecard, but making sure you're delivering to your customers, and also, obviously, most importantly, your employees, is how you're going to be successful in the long run.
Now, David talked about team first. I've got to jump in here. That is really the core of my research. In everything that I've seen, fast growth companies, those leaders are willing to put their team first. People feel connected to the work. They want to take care of the customers, and the company grows because of that. Are you willing to put team first? Are you willing to create the kind of culture that puts team first so that your team can put the customer first? David is a perfect example of this and why it's so important. His words, as if I remember, were absolutely team first. He puts employees before everything else in the business. And that's the reason why he's grown. And I believe that's the reason why the business will continue to grow.
Well, you get aces all around for delivering value for your customers and for the growth of the company. And I think having a great place to work is really a part of that puzzle. I really have one more question for you. As you think about this, other leaders out there that want their companies to grow, maybe they're seeing some frustration, they actually don't put that much attention on the core values. What would you say to that leader about how they think about core values, how they use them from your perspective?
I think everyone's kind of needs to do it their own way. And, I'm obviously honored to share kind of some of my experiences with you, but I don't think there's a playbook. And I think it's really important for people to figure that out on their own. And core values are also irrelevant if you don't believe them and if you're not going to live them every day. So if you're just reciting them because that's what you're supposed to do, just don't waste that time. And there's better things you could be doing then. But, this has been my blueprint, but that thing gets changed every day. And I'm just more of the type of mentality of I'll figure it out as I go, and made plenty of mistakes along the way, but obviously those haven't cost us drastically. And I think we've done a lot of really good things, and ultimately too, just bringing in talent and listening to them. It's also, I think, a huge waste if you're gonna have super talented people, but you act like you know everything. And I learn as much from my employees as hopefully they're learning from me. And I think that's really been the key to the success here, is an open environment. Nobody's above anyone. You might report to someone, but at the end of the day, anyone can speak to anyone in this company, obviously in a respectful way, but don't be shy and don't bite your tongue. And I've told our sales team a lot, if you're agreeing with me 100% of the time, we probably have a big issue. And I want to be challenged. I want to be called out if you disagree, and let's have conversations around that.
Well, I want to leave this because Stacy, your sister, pulled me to the side, and we were talking about this when everybody was dancing, literally in the midst of all of this. We were having so much fun at the Inc. conference. But she goes, the reason why David is so successful and the company's so successful is for two reasons. Because he's humble and he has a sense of humanity that I've never seen inside of leadership before. So I know you're proud of her, but I just wanted to share those words of wisdom from your own sister.
Well, thank you very much. It's super kind. My parents and my sister are my heart, as you probably heard me speak about at the Inc. Gala a little bit, but she's helped me out so much along the way, especially in the early days. She's in the digital advertising agency as well, and helped open a lot of doors. And I'm super lucky to have her as such a great friend and one of my biggest fans.
Well, thanks for being here at Growth Think Tank.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Wow, what a great interview. One thing I really loved about this was I asked him my key question at the end, and he said that a leader should always put their employees first. Putting team first is everything to fast growth companies. Now, 9 out of 10, and I've talked to over 430 different companies where they will say that their employees are the most important piece to their business. It's not their customers. So employee first is such a driving force inside of businesses that David said it, and he's the fastest growing company of the 2019 Inc. list. Now, what do you do with this interview? Hopefully it's inspired you to get more clear about your values. How do you live by them? How do you truly drive success? I would love to help you through that process. One of the things I do is help fast growth companies continue to accelerate by getting back to the fundamentals, by shifting their evolution and evolving as leaders. Now, I'm so excited about the work I do. I create all this content for you. If you're on the fence, if you're just a little bit curious about what it would take for you to work with me, then I want you to reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. Don't worry about if I'm busy or if you can afford me. I love to give. If there's something I can give you for free, I will point you directly to it. If it's my book, I'll give you my book for free if I need to. But if you really want some deep work and want someone to help you, give you the insight you need to grow your business fast, then I would love to be in your corner, your guide, so to speak. So make sure you reach out to Gene@genehammett.com. as always, lead with courage, and I'll see you next time.